He's a man, such a man, such a man. He's a real man's man. He's a man, such a man.
Welcome back to ULTRASPECTICUS, a journey through classic Ultraman. In April of 1967, the second series in the Ultra franchise, Ultraman, officially ended. After the gargantuan success of two back-to-back shows, Ultra Q and Ultraman, Tsuburaya Productions now had the formidable task of making a follow-up series to ones that were already certified instant classics in Japan. The TV station TBS and its sponsors initially wanted them to do more episodes of Ultraman, but production was cutting it too close to the air date, so it was decided that a new series should be made instead. Eiji Tsuburaya wanted to create the new series with similarities to the previous Ultra series, but also implement some new ideas. Several ideas were proposed, such as time travel, fairy tales, and yet another mystery/horror story show in the same vein as Ultra Q. TBS originally pitched an idea for a sequel series, where Hayata and Fuji's son, all grown up, would fight as the new Ultraman, but thankfully it was turned down. It was later decided the new show would not be connected to the past ones in any way, shape, or form. Eventually the task fell to writer and co-manager Tetsuo Kinjo. He took inspirations from the real-life space race at the time, and the popular British sci-fi series Thunderbirds. He came up with a series involving a squad of space explorers and mechanics set in the not-too-distant future on a floating space station. This new team would protect Earth from alien threats with the help of a giant hero. As before, the name Redman was used as a placeholder, but like before, the name was changed yet again to UltraSeven. You may be asking, why UltraSeven? What happened to 1 through 6? Well, I'll explain that later. UltraSeven's look and design would be vastly changed from its predecessor. Gone was the color timer and sleek look. Production gave the new guy a more armored look, a redder color scheme, and more contemporary eyes as opposed to the giant yellow ones. This is also the first Ultra to have a weapon. Not a conventional sword or gun, or even gun sword. That came later. But rather the fin on its head that could be detached and thrown like a boomerang. Another thing that would separate UltraSeven from Ultraman is that he would not be bonded to a human like Hayata. UltraSeven would take on a human form as a disguise and live among humans this way. A great deal like Superman posing as a human when he's secretly an alien. So in this regard, UltraSeven would be the same but different when compared to the last show. UltraSeven premiered on October 1967, and without giving too much away, became the most popular of all the Showa Ultra series. And much like its predecessor Ultraman, it was also dubbed into English and shown here in the States. I remember vividly watching this in all its dubbed glory on TNT when I was a lad.
The greatest defender in the universe, back to Earth. UltraSeven, weekdays at 6 a.m. only on TNT.
Sometimes it was shown early mornings, and sometimes it was shown late night right after Monster Vision. But what will always stick out for me was that clips of UltraSeven were used on a little show called Cartoon Planet.
It's a story. It's a little story about a man. A man called UltraSeven. And this man, this UltraSeven man, was a great superhero, a defender of truth, justice, and the Mid-Pacific Rim.
One episode was even partially riffed by the creator of Mystery Science Theater himself, Joel Hodgson, on an episode of Space Goes Coast to Coast.
Let's see. It's so weird because oh yeah. Thinking like kind of a, I haven't really figured out any kind of, no, I can't do it off the top of my head.
So yeah, you could say UltraSeven had an indirect impact on my life. But how good does it hold up, really? Let's take the nostalgia goggles off, put the Ultra Eye on, and let's find out. Episode 1, The Invisible Challenger, the narrator says that Earth is in danger. To be fair, in shows like this, when isn't it?
地球は狙われている。今、宇宙に漂う幾千の星から恐るべき侵略の魔の手が。
The cops at a roadblock check a passenger who mysteriously vanishes. Word of this reaches the Terrestrial Defense Force, or TDF. The TDF is a military organization created to protect Earth from space invaders. No, not those kind of space invaders. In their underground base, the Ultra Guard, our crew for this show, are tasked with investigating this. We meet our leader, Captain Kiriyama.
よく聞け。敵はついに我々地球防衛軍に対して挑戦状を叩きつけてきた。挑戦状？たった今、パトロール中の防衛隊員2名が自動車ごと消されたという報告が入った。敵はすでに我々の動きを知って襲ったものと考えられる。みんな今後の行動には十分注意するように。隊長、どこでやられたんですか？V 地点から西へ50キロのところだ。というと、すぐ近くじゃありませんか。よし、古橋と曽我、すぐ現場へ。はい。
So we meet the rest of the Ultra Guard. Soga, a marksman. Furuhashi, a strong guy but a little goofy at times. Amagi, the strategist and resident brains of the team. And finally there's Anne, the only female member on the team and also the youngest. She serves as a team medic and also works in the Ultra Guard infirmary. Furuhashi and Soga take the company car called the Pointer. On the road they run into a hitchhiker. Instead of helping him, they emit some kind of smoke screen which makes him vanish. Then they get the car stuck for their troubles.
おい、もっと吹かしてみろ。ダメだな。おい君、我々の邪魔をすると承知しないぞ。
邪魔だなんてとんでもない。その逆ですよ、曽我隊員。
どうして僕の名前を？
あなたが古橋隊員で防衛軍きっての怪力の持ち主だってことも知ってますよ。
我々なんか用でもあんのか？
あなたたちの命を助けてあげようと思ってさっきからここで待ってたんです。
命を助ける？君がか。
After that, some more people disappear. They then ask who this strange hitchhiker is, and he says he'll use the name Dan Murabushi.
どんな恐ろしい手段を使うかもしれません。気をつけてください。
君は一体何者だ？
ご覧の通りのフライボーです。
名前は？
名前？そう、諸星ダンとでもしときましょう。
The aliens blast at them and they take cover. Dan's eyes blink and he can actually see the ship, but no one else can. I wonder if this guy will play a pivotal role in this show. They get in the car and thankfully it has a deflector shield and lasers. Convenient. Does that come standard? Soga informs the others of what happened and they return to the base with Dan. I guess civilians are allowed inside secret military bases now. Who knew? One of the aliens, which looks like a Muppet on LSD, is called Alien Cool. Cool contacts the TDF and tells them to immediately disarm and surrender, showing them all the people that they've abducted. The TDF refuse, so Alien Cool attacks an oil refinery. They can't attack back because they can't find the alien ship, because it's invisible. Dan has an idea to make the ship visible, and Kiriyama goes to the TDF for approval, which they grant. And here we see the Ultra Hawks, which will serve as the fighter planes for this series. They use a device that emits red smoke that makes the ship now visible. Ultra Hawk separates into two planes and opens fire. The alien ship lands and shoots back, bringing them down. Ann and Dan are out cold. Wait, what the hell? They let Dan, a civilian, fly a military vehicle without any training or authorization? Oh my god, there are so many laws and rules that they have just violated. Anyway, Dan wakes up and then abandons ship. He somehow then summons a giant robot chicken named Wyndham to attack the other alien ships that just appeared. It's not very effective though, and he brings it back down. This was the first of 3 capsule monsters that Dan can summon in a pinch. Capsule monsters that you can keep in your pocket to summon later to help fight. Yeah, certain 90s anime clearly weren't inspired by this. So it's time for Dan to reveal his true form. He uses a nifty pair of glasses called the Ultra Eye to become UltraSeven. He boards the alien ship and immediately begins wrecking their shit. And if that wasn't enough of a cheap move for you, instead of having a long drawn-out fight with a giant-sized alien cool, he just lops his brain off! Oh, brutal! UltraSeven don't mess around. The fin on UltraSeven's head is also his signature weapon, the Eye Slugger, a devastating bladed weapon. When blasting fools is just too tedious, UltraSeven throws that thing like a badass boomerang and splits them in two. Or when UltraSeven is really up against the ropes, he can use the Eye Slugger as a bladed weapon for close quarters combat. It's okay, he took knife classes from Sensei Dundee. Well, after that mutilation, UltraSeven saves the kidnapped humans and disposes of the alien ship the only way he can, by blowing it up. Man, UltraSeven has no chill. The crew wonders where the stranger Dan went, and as if in answer, the TDF introduces their 6th member. Little do they know that he's also the 7th team member, UltraSeven. And that, ladies and gents, is why UltraSeven is UltraSeven. Bet you never would have guessed, huh? In Episode 2, The Green Terror, a giant green ball descends to Earth. Wait, is that the Lochnar?
So they worship the everlasting gobstopper?
In the morning, an astronaut's wife goes to see her husband return back to Earth, while the maid is then given a strange package. We'll come back to this. Trust me, this is going somewhere. Meanwhile, a rocket ship returns to Earth after being on Space Station V3 for several months. Insert your own Kamen Rider V3 joke here, because I'm not going to. The Ultra Guard, or UG for short as I'm going to call them because saying that over and over is going to be redundant, greet the Rocket Man and they're curious why his wife isn't here to greet him. After Ishiguro, our space explorer, changes clothes, his wife shows up. What kept you? Dan drives them back home in the Pointer. I guess they couldn't just take a taxi cab home, but whatever. Ishiguro spots the strange rock in the yard and goes inside. Dan too notices the strange rock and he scans it and realizes what it is. Tilsonite 808. Of course he's suspicious as to why such a strange and rare alien rock is in the middle of a yard.
地球には存在しないはずのチルソナイト808がなぜこんなところに
Later that night, Ishiguro opens the package from before and it's the same kind of rock. Uh-oh, I think something bad happened to him in space. His hand then turns green. Ew, your mom warned you about doing that. And he then becomes some sort of alien plant. He crawls outside and scares the crap out of a passing drunk. The drunk man is taken to a hospital and then turns into the same kind of green plant creature. This is like Invasion of the Body Snatchers minus the pods. I half expect Ishiguro to point at his wife and start screeching. Anne's able to subdue him with a sedative. It seems like this is happening more and more. It's like an alien pandemic. The TDF alert the others that this is an alien sickness infecting a lot more people. Dan puts 2 and 2 together and realizes Ichiguro is not quite human anymore. He then reveals his true form, Alien YL. Thankfully they get there just in time to save the wife and Dan transforms when the coast is clear. Gee Dan, maybe you should have stuck around when you saw that mysterious rock in the yard? Just a thought. In Episode 3, Secret of the Lake, Furuhashi and Dan head out in Ultra Hawk to search for some strange object that crashed into the mountains. They ask an old fisherman if he saw anything, but he can't talk now, he's got one on the line. That is until a cute girl takes his fish and swims off. Hey, what the hell? They chase the girl, who begins talking to the fish before setting it free. Okay, I think she's been in this hippie phase too long. The fishermen never saw her before, and our heroes look into the woods for her. Instead, they find the crashed object. Another spaceship, no doubt. They open it up to look inside. It must be a TARDIS. It's bigger on the inside. They find someone sneaking around the console, and it's the girl from before. Suddenly they get gassed. All three are rendered unconscious thanks to this bug-eyed thing. Dan wakes up to notice his Ultra Eye is missing. He tells Furuhashi to look after the girl, and he brings her back to HQ. But surprise, she's actually an alien in disguise. Didn't we just do this last episode? Dan chases the other one, but loses her. Oh, we're dealing with twins here. The girl goes back into the ship and starts fiddling with the controls, summoning a monster from the lake. Ella King. Dan can't call HQ as his watch is on the fritz. He takes cover and summons another capsule monster to help. This time it's Miklas. It wrestles Ella King for a while, but proves not to be very helpful. I'm getting the feeling none of them are. The fisherman from before calls UG and tells them about the kaiju, so they head out in Ultra Hawk. Wait, the UG are listed? In the phone book? Ella King beats Miklas down with its tail and then electrocutes the poor thing, so Dan calls him back. The strange girl then orders Ella King to attack a populated area. The crew shows up just in time with Ultra Hawk and opens fire. They get a few shots in, but Ella King brings them down with one shot. Back at HQ, the other girl goes and breaks the console. The guards chase her as she tries to escape in a rocket. Dan goes into the ship and finds out the girl is the one that stole his Ultra Eye. In the scuffle, she's knocked out cold and Dan becomes UltraSeven. The alien girls try to get away from the ship. So it turns out they were twin girls, and they were both aliens. The Doubleman alien twins try to get away in their ship. They vow to come back with a stronger monster and take over next time. Let's just say they get what's coming to them, and I'll leave it at that. In Episode 4, Max Respawn, Dan takes Soga and Amagi to a secret ship, the NS Max, the TDF's newest and best ship. Later, Dan sees a woman having car trouble and stops. Turns out Dan fell for the oldest trick in the book as she wangs him on the head and steals his Ultra Eye. Oh, goddammit, not again! You've gotta get a protective case for those! Or at least think about contacts. Just saying. Meanwhile, back on the new ship, Soga and Amagi run into an old CO who tells them what the Max was built for. Seems several nuclear tankers have been going missing. It's up to them to find out why. So yeah, basically our heroes and the new ship are posing as bait. Later, Anne patches up Dan's head wound and gives him a good luck charm, saying she'll always be with him. Hold the phone, I think Anne is sweet on our hero here. Meanwhile, the bait, I mean Max, is lifted up into the air in some kind of red mist. Kiriyama orders the Ultra Hawks to be launched pronto. They search for hours, but there's no sign of the NS Max. Furuhashi in Ultra Hawk 2 scours outer space and spots the ship floating around. He boards the Max and finds everyone is out on the floor. He wakes them up and shows them that they're in space. Boy, it's a good thing they're all able to breathe in space. The culprit then reveals itself, Alien Godala. This new alien reveals its plan to conquer Earth by having the TDF focus on missing ships and not much else. Wait, what?
なぜこんなことをしたんだ。こうして船を隠せば、地球防衛軍の注意力は船の消失した海域に集中する。その隙に我々は地球を征服するだろう。
Furuhashi returns to Earth and says he didn't find the NS Max out in space. Dan, of course, is obviously not buying this and follows him. Sure enough, he was right, and he finds him in the middle of sabotaging a reactor. The alien traps him and disguises himself as Dan. He says in 15 minutes the HQ will be blown sky high. But this plan soon goes awry when Anne sees Dan without that good luck charm she gave him. Meanwhile, Soga and Amagi are able to get back to Earth because, luckily, the NS Max has a rocket built into it and is able to re-enter Earth. Convenient. Dan tries to escape his prison, but his laser's useless. He asks a worker to get him out of his prison, but soon discovers it's the girl who attacked him. She picks up the charm that Ann gave him, and Dan ricochets a blast off it to free himself. Amagi reaches Kiriyama just in time to tell him about the bomb. Anyway, they find it and deactivate it just in time.
地球防衛軍と共に滅びること、それが私に与えられた使命なのさ。
He blasts the faker, who tries to get away. Seven flies after him and he goes giant size. Fight time! When it tries to escape, UltraSeven shoots him in the butt and he explodes. Yee, ouch! What a way to go! Apparently UltraSeven took his fighting skills from Cap.
奴の尻の穴を狙い。アンヌ、それは弾じゃない。コドラ星人だ。
In Episode 5, Vanish Time, a jet heads from the TDF base in Antarctica to Japan. The crew eagerly awaits one of the passengers, Professor Yushima. He's coming to fix their radar system. All seems to be going well on the flight until everything stops. The plane is frozen in time, and for a moment nobody seems to notice. All guests of the UltraSeven show fly TWA. The plane touches down and the crew greets Yushima. Furuhashi acts as his bodyguard. That night, as he stands guard, some kind of gold dust rains down on the place and a new alien appears. Alien Vera. This alien is so nice it introduces itself to the professor. It then takes control of his mind and shoots some laser into the diodes he's bringing to the base. Alien Vera orders him to destroy the radar tomorrow, and to watch out for the one named Dan. My god, how did all these people know that Dan Murabushi is UltraSeven? He must have a reputation like John Wick in outer space. Everybody knows who he is. Once he gets there, the possessed Yushima quote-unquote fixes the new radar while Dan assists him. Once it's fixed, the console begins to go haywire. Yushima thinks that an alien infiltrated the base and sabotaged it. He calls out Dan as a saboteur, and Kiriyama puts the group on emergency alert. The Ultra Hawk 3 is sent to watch the skies over Japan since the radar is out. At the same time, an armada of alien ships head to Earth, and our heroes have no way of spotting them. Dan thinks he's onto him, so he eavesdrops on the professor and hears him talking to the alien Vera. He tries to detain the prof, but he resists. The crew sees this scuffle and breaks it up. Yushima pins this all on Dan, saying he's an alien spy, so the crew grab Dan and put him in the brig. Dan tries to tell them that he's not an alien spy, but they don't listen. The armada is spotted by Ultra Hawk 3, so everyone boards Ultra Hawk 1 and head out. Dan hears the alarm going off and transforms to break out of jail. Yushima tries to sabotage Ultra Hawk 1, but Seven blasts him and fixes the plane. Ultra Hawk 1 joins 3, and together they fight off the armada. With UltraSeven's help, of course. Alien Vera rises out of the crashed ships, and it's time for UltraSeven to lay the smackdown. In Episode 6, Dark Zone, Dan returns from patrol with not much to report. Meanwhile, the radar picks up something heading to Earth. Meanwhile, Ann is scared at something in her room. She calls Dan and they spot a shadow standing up. A living shadow? It talks to them and says it's in pain. He says he's from a distant city and was injured in an accident. Obviously, they don't trust this walking shadow, and vice versa. They alert Kiriyama and the TDF about that signal, and Dan and Ann talk to the shadow. They seem to get along at first, but then he says something about living on Earth that startles Dan. Kiriyama calls Dan to the command center and tells him they picked up some strange communication from a place called Pegasus City. This city seems to be on a collision course with Earth. Chief Officer Manabe orders everyone to their stations. Oh, did I not mention him yet? He's the top brass of the TDF. He's the guy Kiriyama reports to, if you will. Dan asks the mystery alien about Pegasus City. The Shadow suggests that they just adjust Earth's orbit and get out of the way, but Dan says they can't do that, obviously.
何を当ててるんだ? 彼らの言う通りしばらく地球の軌道を変えてやればいい。ただそれだけのことじゃないか。
バカを言え。地球の軌道をどうして変えるんだ?
なんだって? おい! 地球は自分で動けないのか? 勝手に動いているものの上に人間は乗っかってるだけなのか? それだったら野蛮な宇宙のほとんどの人と同じじゃないか。
どうしたんだ? おい! 返事をしろ!
Dan realizes what we've all pretty much figured out by now and realizes this thing has been playing them. It slips away before they can blast it. There's no way to contact this floating city, so the chief thinks that destroying the city may be the only way to save Earth. Ultra Hawk is sent into space to evacuate it. They spot Pegasus City and attempt to alert everyone living there to get out. But nothing happens. Nobody answers. Something's wrong. Kiriyama reluctantly gives up on any citizens living there, and they reach minimum safe distance before blowing the city to pieces. The Shadow Alien then finds Anne and tells her that it will destroy Earth to save the city. We then see its true form, Alien Pegasa. As it escapes the base, it's followed by Dan and the Pointer. Pegasa then brings down a bomb and heads to the Earth's core. Dan uses his Ultra Eye to transform and grabs the bomb, saving Earth just in the nick of time. Dan wonders if Pegasa got away, and sure enough, it did. With no city to return to, maybe Alien Pegasa is still hiding on Earth. Who knows? Maybe it'll get some underground apartment miles below the surface of the Earth with some guy named Riku. Who knows? In Episode 7, Space Prisoner 303, these two Elmer Fudd-looking goofballs find a small spaceship in a bush. When they inspect it, they're killed by... Predator? Meanwhile, on Space Station V3, the TDF get an important message. They decide to call Kiriyama, but he calls them first. It turns out they both caught the strange signal. The strange monster from before attacks again, killing a gas station attendant, and then starts chugging fuel. He must be very thirsty. Dude, there's probably a Coca-Cola machine right over there by the payphone, or... Well, maybe it's got an internal combustion engine for a stomach, I don't know. Another gas station attendant shows up and then gets attacked as well. Before he falls over, he's able to contact the Ultra Guard. Okay, how is everyone able to contact the Ultra Guard? I didn't know they had their own hotline, or is it just like 911 or dialing 0? Later they show up to investigate and spot bite marks on the gas pump. They hear gunshots and find one of the hunters who describes the spaceship. After finding the miniature spaceship, Dan decides to blow it up. Yeah, if you haven't guessed already, he's good at blowing up spaceships. Meanwhile, on the V3, Mizuo, captain of the station, comes to Earth base to tell Kiriyama what the signal means. The deciphered message reads that a criminal 303 has escaped from planet Crosso and is a violent murderer. And if you couldn't guess, 303 is already here. This escaped convict then tries to attack a family after taking refuge in the garage. One boy, who saw the whole thing, sneaks upstairs and goes out the window to get help. He finds a cop and tells them what's going on, who in turn alerts the UG. 303, or its real name, Alien Crosso, hypnotizes Anne into driving off in the Pointer, and later uses her to hijack a ship and take her with him. Dan suggests using the Alpha and Gamma to pursue them. They dock in midair with the Beta ship that the alien took. Soga saves Anne while Dan tries to attack the alien, who tries to breathe fire on him. Holy crap. He tells them to separate the Beta from the rest of the ship, which they reluctantly do.
フラシュタイン。
ダン、生きてたのか。
隊長、攻撃は無用です。
なぜだ。
キュラス星人の体はガソリンタンクも同然です。今に自爆します。
そうか、了解。
広い宇宙でももう君の逃げ場はないのだ、キュラス星人。だがそれは自業自得と言うべきだ。宇宙でもこの地球でも正義は一つなんだ。
まるで泣いてるようだな。
In Episode 8, The Marked Town, a town called Kitagawa experiences strange behavior in the population, including a man beating his wife. Let's not focus on that. Anyway, the kids are excited to see Ultra Guard come into town. They must not have much excitement around here. They pick up one of the boys and tells them his father died in a plane crash. The pilot was also Anne's uncle, so she, like Dan, is curious about the town's behavior. It seems like several people around this town are either dying mysteriously or doing mysterious things. Furuhashi and Soga head to Kitagawa, where they see a man opening fire on the townspeople. Furuhashi then gets shot in a skirmish. Soga manages to shoot the rifle out of the man's hands. When they finally apprehend the active shooter, he then faints. When he comes to later, he doesn't remember doing anything. He says he's scared to touch a gun as Dan watches the interrogation. The only thing the man can remember before all this happened was buying a pack of cigarettes from a gas station vending machine. Oh yeah, for you young viewers out there, a long time ago cigarettes used to have their own vending machines. Crazy, I know, but they exist. I remember them. Dan then suddenly gets attacked by a cement truck. He knows someone or something is hiding. The mysterious figure knows he's UltraSeven.
何者だ。姿を見せろ。誰だ。堂々と出てこい。
諸星団、いやウルトラセブン、我々の邪魔をするな。これは命令だ。今すぐに手を引け。我々にとって君を倒すことは問題ではない。だが同じ宇宙人同士で傷つけ合うのは愚かなことだ。もう一度忠告しておく。北川町に近寄るな。ウルトラセブン。
Back on the base, Furuhashi lights up a cig, and you guessed it, it's the same ones the shooter had. He goes crazy and attacks his co-workers. They try to restrain him, and he too faints. Dan puts two and two together and realizes the cigarettes are causing this. Dan begins to ask around where these cigarettes come from. The boy from before, Hiroshi, remembers that his dad bought a pack of cigarettes from a gas station vending machine. Dan and Ann see the machine, but it's empty, so they decide to wait until someone comes to refill it. Space Station V3 reports that the cigarettes were filled with space poppy seeds from the Planet Y exploration. It seems these tiny red crystals, when ingested, causes someone to see other people as enemies. Dan and Ann eventually see the vendor who comes to fill the machine. They follow the vendor to a warehouse, and big surprise, it's an alien who then tells Dan its entire plan. This evil Joe Camel here, Alien Metron, lures Dan to their spaceship and then takes off from the warehouse. Ann calls HQ and tells them what happened. Kiriyama orders Ultra Hawk to go out after them. They chase the ship, which looks like lips for some reason. It splits in two and Ultra Hawk opens fire. Dan transforms and gets off just in time before the ship is shot to hell. In Episode 9, Operation Android Zero, Soga and Furuhashi patrol late night in the Pointer. They spot a beautiful blonde woman in the road and screech to a halt. She asks if they are Ultra Guard, namely Dan Moribushi. Furuhashi tries to impress the pretty girl and says yes, he is. She shakes his hand, which gives him a shock. He's able to swipe a brooch off her just before passing out. Back at the base, the UG find a strange language in this brooch and are able to translate it. It says Operation Android Command 0. The next day, the crew is greeted by a bunch of kids. Dan sees that the kids are all holding guns and wearing pins that bear the exact same insignia as that girl's brooch. Some strange man is giving out these, quote, toy guns and is making a toy jet fly around like a real one. But once he sees them, he takes his cart and leaves. Dan gets a call from Amagi saying that the pendant is made out of space metal. Yes, space metal. So, of course, an alien is behind all this. I mean, God forbid it be an eccentric toy man or something, that'd be crazy. Speaking of the eccentric toy man, he's onto them and plans to put his plan into motion. The symbols on the kids' toys and shirts are receivers. Someone is planning to send a signal to control them. That night, the toy maker opens a door to reveal a puppet woman, the one who attacked Furuhashi. She turns into a real woman and he commands her to get Dan this time. Dan and Soga head back to the town and run into the girl, who then runs. They chase her and it was all a trap to lure them into a toy store. Like a Bond villain, the old man reveals the kids will be hypnotized and that their toy guns are indeed real ones. He plans to use this army of children to conquer the world. Dan thinks he's bluffing, but the old man shows them toys that come to life. This is starting to remind me of the movie Dolls, or that movie Toys. Dan and Soga hide from the barrage of deadly fire and make a break for it, but Soga gets hit. The android girl fires finger lasers at them and they find a shady spot. At first our heroes can't reach HQ, but eventually they do get through and explain what happened, and the others don't believe them at first, but Dan convinces them to get the toy guns away from the children before midnight. They then get cut off again when the android girl spots them. Dan wants to transform, but he can't with Soga around. So he knocks him out and then transforms. You could have just entrusted him with your secret identity, but if you did that, I guess we wouldn't have a show. The toy man takes his real doll and runs, but UltraSeven corners them. He blasts the girl, reverting her back to a mannequin. Oh god, now I'm thinking of the movie Mannequin. Kill it with fire! The toy man then turns into his alien form, Alien Chibble. This thing is pure nightmare fuel. Again, kill it with fire! In episode 10, The Suspicious Neighbor, a young boy has nothing better to do than spy on his neighbor while his leg is injured. So he pulls a Jimmy Stewart in Rear Window and spies on the neighbor. Later he gets a visit from Ann and his sister. He tells them that his neighbor is acting strange, and of course they don't believe him. The boy's sister sees a dead petrified bird outside the window. And that doesn't bring up a red flag? Meanwhile, back at the base, the crew picks up a strange signal on radar.
真鍋参謀、何でしょう。
近いな。
ええ、岸の東北約3キロの地点です。別荘地のあたりだ。参謀、2ヶ月ほど前にもこの地点で同じような反応がありました。
変だな。
あ、消えた。
Meanwhile, the neighbor's house is, blinking green. Ritsuko, the boy's sister, calls the Ultra Guard. Dan and Ann show up, and Dan with his Ultra Vision spots the bird. They then get the okay to check it out. I guess that's enough to convince them to check it out. Dan is suddenly pulled out of the window and disappears. Then we enter this acid trip that Dan ended up going to. He's trapped and spots the culprit, alien Icarus from planet number 17. His plan is to, what else, conquer Earth. Icarus says the Earthlings cannot see into this world, this fourth dimension, so they'll be helpless. Dan tries to transform, but his powers don't work here. He then collapses. Seems this world is taking its toll on him. A flying saucer then attacks an oil refinery, and naturally the Ultra Guard find out. Kiriyama orders the crew to head out and intercept it. Dan wakes up and is still trapped in this fourth dimension. Ultra Hawk closes in on the UFO while Anne can hear a strange sound coming from the boy's room. And when she shouts at it, Dan can hear her, and vice versa. Dan tries to close in on her voice to find a way out. Dan tells Anne of Icarus's plan but loses contact with her. He finds the console and shoots it. Kinda careless of Icarus to leave that unguarded and out in the open. They're back in the real world and Icarus grows giant-sized. Now Dan can transform and kick his ass. Oh, one quick note about this fight that I don't think happens in any other episode in the series. We actually get a POV shot from Seven's perspective. I thought that was a nice touch. Well, that's it for now. Check back next time when we'll see a giant gold dragon, one nigh indestructible alien robot, and I'll talk about a certain controversial banned episode of the UltraSeven series. And I'll see you in the land of light.
What a man, what a man, what a man, what a mighty good man. Say it again now. What a man, what a man, what a man, what a mighty good man. Yes, he is.
隊長、そういえばライフルマンを行動後失神したように眠っているんです。よく似てますね。その隊員。危ない。人がやめろ。来な。よいしょ、その隊員。